Today, let's talk about qi. And I think qi is important, more important than modern meditators or people who talk about meditation properly acknowledge. Because I think qi is a mystical word, and it's an idea of something that can't be tested by science. So unfortunately, we live in a time when the only things that are really given validity in our public discussion are things that can be sort of tested in a lab or tested by science. And so then you can put it down in a book and you can have statistics with it, and people can rest assured that they won't be made fun of when they're talking about it. How would we be made fun of? People see us as superstitious, as kind of, I don't know, shallow or woo-woo, whatever woo-woo means. Woo-woo if we believe in things like chi or psychic powers, or there's this strange bias in our culture. If you tend to believe in these things, it's almost like, oh, if you believe in these things, then you're kind of dumb because you're fooling yourself. You're fooling yourself into, it's actually, it's all in your mind, and you just, maybe even it's just placebo effect. You're feeling something and you're calling it qi. So that's my guess for why we don't talk about qi when it comes to meditation, even though qi is something that has been talked about since as early as the earliest Buddhist teachings. What the Buddha taught about meditation was, I could say, almost completely about qi. He didn't call it qi. Qi is a Chinese word meaning energy. The Buddha called it rapture. He called it bliss energy. And I don't think that's at odds with this idea, the Chinese idea of qi at all. This energy, when you experience it, depending on your, daily composition of nervous system, what you ate, how much you meditated, how much you slept, what dreams you have, qi can appear to be different things. One day it's rapture, one day it's creative energy, one day it's a feeling of potency, a feeling of consciousness expansion. But nevertheless, whatever you call it, the point is that the Buddha, in his earliest meditation instructions, instructed his students, instructed us to cultivate our relationship with qi. Use it to deepen our connection with our body, to free ourselves from attachments to wrong identifications of self, to free ourselves from our attachments to our cravings, to free ourselves from our attachment to the ups and downs of yin and yang, the whole dramatic story. Because that's where our qi has gone. That's kind of, in Taoism, they call that mundane energy. Mundane energy is what we are probably not born with. A baby, is an archetypal ideal in Taoism. A baby is a pure expression of unadulterated qi. And it's as we become acculturated and Probably maybe it's kind of built into our instinctual development as well. But that chi becomes used to figure out the world. And as we figure out that there's things that we like, there's things that we don't like, then we use our minds to navigate between those two extremes. And our chi gets attached to our thoughts and our cravings and how we motivate ourselves with imagination of reward and imagination of punishment. Our chi is trapped there. And so you get to the extremes of feeling, like you're totally external, and you feel maybe a lack of meaning. If you're not in touch with chi, that's another way that chi, depending on how you're feeling in the moment, could be described or could be perceived by yourself. Chi could be perceived as a sense of meaning. And so when we're all chi spread out over our worldly endeavors, we're all familiar with the fact that in a way that can work. It can be satisfying enough in that way that we can go for years like that. We all know that. Doing the same job, doing the same family routines, just full and completing tasks and setting goals and desiring things and getting those things and filling up our time like that. And but for many people at some point, and my guess or my faith is that for all people, even if you don't know in that lifestyle that you're missing something, that's a true thing that happens in life. Somebody can say to you, hey, you're missing something, and you might think, I'm not missing anything. So that's kind of true. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. And yet, if you knew the thing that you were missing, you would say, oh, yeah, you're right. I am missing that. And so what we can miss when we're totally external and totally task-oriented, goal-oriented, craving-oriented is that sense of meaning, that sense of mysterious, actually, creativity. And that's another facet of chi, is a sense of mystery and a sense of meaning. And they go hand in hand, because what's a sense of meaning? Nobody knows. So it's a sense of mystery. And maybe meaning is being in touch with the mystery that is at the core of our existence, at the core of not even some sort of cosmological, metaphysical existence, but right here, right now. There's a mystery at the core of our existence. And we just go about our daily lives without ever asking about how it's all happening or marveling about how it's all happening. We just think I'm this person, I do this is what I want, this is blah, blah, blah. But we don't ever have the ability to even see what all of that mental activity is standing on. Where is it all coming from? You can't actually see that source. It's like an eyeball trying to see itself. It can't. So there's a mystery. And we could say that mystery is the eyeball, but nobody can say what that is. So when our chi is spread out amongst our daily activities, our daily goals, our daily strivings, worries, stresses, hurries, anxieties, fears, hopes, frustrations. We we can feel just flat, just kind of flat. And we look around the world, and once we're past a certain age in this life, we look around and we go, is that it? Is this all there is? And different people come up with different answers. Yes, that's all there is. But I would say yes. So there, that's all there is, and there is this, and there is this experience of chi, which is, at this point, mind blowing to me that it is not simply a common human global cultural understanding of the existence of chi, the pleasurableness of it, the accessibility of it, and according to some traditions, the necessity of being with your chi, the necessity for various reasons. I mean, Buddhism has a cosmology that we've been being reborn into different forms of existence over and over and over again. And I don't know how that lands for you, but it's what's involved there is sort of an enormous amount of losing, an enormous amount of becoming attached, loving others, loving the self, what we regard as the self, actually wrongly, what we wrongly regard as the self, and losing it over and over and over again. Millions of loved ones lost, millions of times losing our own life and it being gone. And so how many times, I mean, it kind of seems like not a big deal to us because we've totally forgotten about the other million times. And, so who cares? This one's not so bad. But if we did have a chance at the end of this life to pull back and see, when that would be sort of a breathtaking moment. Oh, like, whoa, I did it again, and how, and in Buddhism, it's how can I not do it again? How can I not do that again? And so that's one way that, working with this chi is seen as a necessity. It was the Buddha's great insight before he was enlightened, was that perhaps this chi is the way to get the knowledge that will liberate the self. And there's another sense, so there's that cosmological sense, which that's a cultural or, personal thing if you want to take on that. But there's another sense of the necessity of familiarizing yourself with chi. And that's the sense that we've been talking about. That's the sense of true joy, of embodiment, of knowing you're on your path, of when things get hard, you know a place to come to where things are not hard. And you will have to leave that place. You will have to leave your meditation seat. And meditation is not an answer to those hard problems. You still have to use your brain and your effort and your character to solve those problems. But a growing that source of chi, and it can be seen as a tree. and we call it the Bodhi tree. Growing that Bodhi tree is like growing the flow of chi in your body, in your mind, and in your life. And so there's multiple benefits. There's the benefit you get from sitting in it just for an hour. There's the benefit that you get from it having a residual effect with you throughout your day from sitting in it for an hour. And then there's the growing effect that it has on your total life as you develop it as an unshakable practice that you know you can return to. So, with all that being said, we'll go back to the instruction from the Buddha about qi. And so, as you might know, there's all these different kinds of ways to meditate. You can pay attention to your breath. You can do, according to the Buddha, you can analyze the components of your body, what's maybe called sort of a body scan these days, although analyzing the parts of your body is a little bit different than a body scan. There's, you could do what in Zen is called just sitting. You could have a visualization meditation. You could have a mantra meditation. I think the whole point of all these meditation instructions is to liberate qi from your mind and return it to the body. And so in the Buddha's meditation instruction, that's what happens. First, you sit down. You set up an intention of mindfulness. That means an intention of keeping your eyes cast down or your eyes closed, your body still and erect. Then you can go the easy way. You can just wait and see if that liberates your qi, because it's a big effort already. If you can think of it that way for a moment, it's a big deal. In the course of the evolutionary line that started with the first prebiotic things that developed into something that looks like a thing that we can call living, single cell organism, in an unbroken line down to you now. How many times has any of the beings, the animals in that line, been able to stop, been able to stand against instinct, right? To stand for a moment, to sit still, to keep the eyes cast down, to practice with willpower and intention. This is a profound moment. Every time you set this up, even for 5 seconds, for a minute, this is a big deal. My point is that it's a big practice. I mean, it may, just sitting still and keeping your eyes cast down or closed may seem like nothing, but it's huge. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's huge. It's a big deal. It takes a lot of mental activity, actually. Now, it's a testament to how profoundly powerful you are as an organism that it doesn't seem like a big deal. But it's a big deal just to sit still. That is occupying your mind a lot. That is already pulling a lot of your qi back away from the things that it has been attached to, from the things that have been scattering it, scattering it outward, back from the things that have been scattering it outward, where it often falls without fruit, in a place where it won't take root and grow and benefit your life. So now just sitting here, it's like you've become, a magnet, and the cheese starts coming back to you. It will. That's why in Zen, they don't give much meditation instruction. Just sit, they say. Just sit. But that's just another technique as well. And it's a little bit of a tricky one, because if you do just sitting a lot, then you might get tired of that technique, and you might think, oh, but I'm just sitting. But you're doing a technique called just sitting. But it's kind of exploring what's the easiest way to meditate. And the easiest way to meditate is to sit still and kind of gently be with the body. Sometimes that's not enough, and that's acknowledged again in the earliest Buddhist meditation instruction. Sometimes it's not enough just to sit still. And so the Buddha actually the first step when someone would come to him and say, hey, I want what you have, he would say, okay. He would offer some things to think about in meditation. He says the first stage of meditation is marked by thought and analysis. And that goes against a lot of what we culturally share about meditation. That meditation is about not having thoughts. And it's about focus. But the first thing the Buddha would offer to a person with a lot of energy, enough energy that they're either converting to Buddhism or they're becoming a homeless beggar, living in the forest like the Buddha. That's a lot of energy that takes somebody there. So he would give that energy, something to think about. So instead of having somebody who's struggling with their thoughts, be quiet thoughts, I'm trying to focus, he would give the thoughts something to eat, something to work on. But the difference about this thing that he would give to them versus thoughts that just come to us from our mundane conditioning is that these are specific things that are meant to liberate the qi from mental formations. Mental formations being our imaginary hopes, fears, our imagination of what's happened in the past. And you can go on. You can think about that in meditation. What are mental formations? Everything. And so as an example of something the Buddha would give people to think about is, think about how the 4 elements are what your body is made of. Your body is made out of air, stone, sunshine, photons, photon energy, and water. And so your thoughts, and so your emotions, and so your willpower, how is anything in this experience right now not composed of other things? What can you point at? And so that's a contemplation. And then another contemplation I mentioned earlier, think of how another way that your body is composed, right? So like I said, the first stage of meditation is marked by thought and analysis. Well, here's thought and analysis. Think about all the various parts of your body. Think about how you have, or there is. The language in the Buddhist instruction is there is. There is skin. Here there is skin. A whole suit of it. Here there is hair. In this body, there are eyeballs, with gross little danglia that connect to our brain. It's right here. Right here. You can put your finger against your temple and be 2 inches away from touching it. Right here. Right here is a brain. There's a tongue. There are ribs. There are intestines. This kind of analysis. So what's happening here is that by removing your thinking from all the stuff that it has been habitually accustomed to thinking about. And this, in the beginning, it might take a while to really start pulling your energy away from that. Think about how ossified, your chi could be how calcified, in those patterns of thinking. So it'll take a while. It can take a while. But then when you start to think about something else, immediately you've stopped watering those seeds. Okay? So that's the first thing that has happened. You've stopped watering the seeds of mundane thinking just by thinking about something that has nothing to do with that. Now, the double power of this brilliant, very interesting, and if we hadn't ever encountered it before, very weird to have come from the founder of one of the world's great religions. Meditation of thinking about all of our different parts of the body. The second aspect of power of that contemplation is that we're in the body. And the body is much more stable than our mental life, than our mental, emotional life that is kind of dramatically structured. Drama is that laughing mask and the crying mask, right? Boo, yay. Yin, yang. In the beginning there was one, and it split into two. And the two had intercourse and gave birth to the 10,000 things. So we're pulling back from the 10,000 things, and we're pulling back from the two, and back to the one. And the one, I'm not sure that the one is the body, because it too is perishable. And yet, how much more stable is the body than the mind, than concepts? If you cultivated a sense of focusing, paying attention to the body, which is how the chi will go where you direct. So then your chi life, and chi might be what we call soul, then your soul is in your body. And then your soul, it takes a lot more to endanger your soul. So then there's a third power to this meditation. And that power is that it liberates chi, not just from our concepts, but it's actually starting to liberate chi from our body, from a misidentification, I would actually say a misidentification of our body. And the misidentification that we do with our body is identifying as our body. And so what happens in our mind when we think about our body in this way is we actually start to develop some distance from it. There's something in us that through looking at this, our body in this way, rather than something that is self somehow, oh, you hurt me, right? We think of the body as self. And it's starting to pull that very powerful, like there's no more powerful way that we use chi than to identify with things. That's where our chi goes. And so we have an enormous amount of misused chi by identifying the body as self. And so by looking at the component parts of the body, we're seeing that we're seeing, even without having to say, oh, and there's no self, oh, and there's no self, without having to even make that analysis, when you repeat over and over, when you see that the body is bones and blood and veins and fat and skin and water and salt, when you think of that over and over again, there's this kind of natural, that's effort that you're making there. But regarding what the chi does, it effortlessly, from your effort, it starts to lift off. It's of that misidentification. And the more that the chi lifts off from the misidentification with conceptual thinking, with personal identity, your ego, and then the more it lifts off with identification with the body, the more, for lack of a better phrase or term, you have. And the more you have, the better it feels. And then the instruction that the Buddha leads us to next is he asks his young monks, young in the way, sometimes very old people came to him to leave their home and live outdoors and beg for their food. But all in the way, when they were young, they were given these meditation contemplations. But he says once these contemplations have started to develop that sense of rapture, once this rapture is there, then you can kind of let go of your technique. And his instruction is to try to suffuse your body with the rapture. So the rapture, again, we'll go back to the beginning, is chi. So that's what we're calling chi. So we don't have to call it rapture. We can call it bliss. We can call it chi. Chi is sort of I feel like a really good, it's a more modern word. It's something that maybe we all have a chance to identify with more than rapture or bliss. He also calls it concentration. But concentration we have a problem with because we think concentration is a verb. But he's referring to concentration as a result. It's like being a concentrate, being, from a solution, a concentrate. You've gotten rid of the superfluous stuff, and now you have a concentrate of the potent stuff. And so he says, what do you do with this potent stuff? You spread it throughout the body.